Can you believe it? The Memphis Grizzlies actually made a trade deadline deal. Wonder of wonders, miracle of miracles. The impossible has happened. The unstoppable force met the immovable object, and it resulted in Luke Kennard coming to Memphis. Exciting times? Are the Grizzlies better? Are they actually still the second best team in the Western Conference? We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Grizzlies.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host, Joe Mullinax, joined by my co-host, the wonderful Damichael Cole. Before we get any further, Damichael, I don't know if you saw in the comments from the recent show, somebody is concerned that I'm making you uncomfortable with all of my compliments, especially the handsome one. So
Really?
do you need me to stop calling you handsome?
I didn't hear that, but I'm gonna go back and look at the comments and find out one myself.
Okay.
But
Sure.
But Joe, I appreciate the compliments.
Yes.
Sure, you appreciate the compliments. We dish out compliments on Locked On Grizzlies. We appreciate the compliments. So it's our way of showing love. It's all good. It's all good.
My love language is words of affirmation. That's what it told me on Facebook. That is my love language. That my words of affirmation is my love language. So I'm just articulating my love for my co-host over there, Damichael Cole of the Commercial Appeal in Memphis Grizzlies beat writer. I am formerly of Grizzly Bear Blues at SB Nation. I write for SB Nation NBA, fan-sided, and I also have my Substack, Written in the Dark, that focuses on the Grizzlies. But the main gig now is Locked On Grizzlies. We are proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network. You can find us free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We are also on YouTube. Yesterday was a very busy day over on our YouTube page. I posted our first YouTube short, which was very successful in the wake of the Luke Kennard trade. And then I also did a brief instant reaction show to the trade within the hour or so that it went down. Lots of success, lots of comments, lots of views. Much appreciated. Thank you guys so much for making yesterday one of the most successful days at Locked On Grizzlies since Damichael and I started co-hosting together. Damichael's a big part of that. He's obviously busy with the day job on days like the trade deadline day. So I'm happy to carry that weight for a little bit. And we're back here to break it all down together. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by RocketMoney. Stop throwing your money away, cancel unwanted subscriptions, and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNBA. Damichael, Luke Kennard is a member of the Memphis Grizzlies. I already had a chance to give my instant reaction take in yesterday's afternoon emergency podcast, which again is available. Check it out after this one if you see fit. I'll give a few more thoughts here in a moment, but I want to give the floor to my partner first. When you saw the trade go down, what were your immediate thoughts? Not the big swing, but also not nothing, right? It's at least something. And that is an acknowledgement that something had to be done to shore up the back end of the rotation.
It was huge. It was something that was needed. And when I saw the trade, you know what went through my mind? Shooter. Automatically. This is there's no exaggeration to say this guy's one of the best shooters in the world. There's no exaggeration. The proof's in the pudding with the numbers, with the attempts, with the way, if you watch the Clippers play over the years, the way they try to get him to shoot the ball. And with that being said, this is a guy, I watch all those Duke, North Carolina games, and it's kind of, I don't think it's a weird coincidence here that a UNC guy's getting shipped out and the Duke guy's coming in. But with that being said, that's what I thought. Shooter, right? And, this is a guy you like to talk about, improving the back end a lot, right, Joe? I think you mentioned before, you want your eighth man to be better, right? You want your ninth man to be better. Having Luke Kennard as your eighth man is a pretty solid, as your ninth man potentially. However that ends up working out, 6, 7, whatever the case may be. Having him come off the bench, that shooter to go, with those pairings that we talked about, I could see him, in those lineup pairings with Ja and Dylan, and Ja, Dylan, and Steven Adams, because you're the lineup pairing where they play Tyus, Dez, and Jaren Jackson Jr. together. I think that group, pretty much plays pretty well. But when they go to that other pairing where it's Ja, Dylan, and Steven Adams, they rebound well, they defend well, but the shooting kind of disappears. And now you put Luke Kennard potentially, work him into that group, and you have two pairings who can basically get to the rim and can score at a high level.
It matters a ton. I think it was Drew Hill of the Daily Memphian that tweeted out that Luke Kennard is shooting something like 52% from the corner this season. Yeah. If you watch Grizzlies basketball, which obviously Damichael gets paid to do, that's his profession. I get paid, but less money to do in terms of watching and following the Grizzlies. If you pay attention at all, John Morant, Tyus Jones creating off the dribble in some form of the pick and roll, maybe a double screen here and there. Somebody's in the corner all the time. And they get open shots all the time, especially when it's John Morant doing the dribble penetration. Now, instead of kicking to John Conchar, now instead of kicking to Zaire Williams, now instead of kicking to, small sample size, so not entirely fair, but Danny Green, you are kicking to Luke Kennard, who over the last 3,800 minutes, I mentioned this on the emergency pod, over the last 3,800 minutes of play per cleaning the glass, he is shooting 45% from three. 45%. You can make a legitimate argument this dude is the best three-point shooter in the NBA. Now, volume and usage, you can have a debate there. I'm not saying for sure it's a lock. But this dude, in terms of catch and shoot opportunities, can shoot the three and shoot it well. Now, what that means for down the road, how they utilize him, we're going to have the host of Locked On Clippers joining us in the next segment to talk about some ways that he felt that the Clippers didn't utilize him fully. And I think that's interesting because there's kind of been a call to try to create off the dribble a little bit. Maybe he's an underrated defender. We'll get some more input from Darian Vizieri here in a little bit. But I do want to ask you, Damichael, because we're not experts on Luke Kennard.
Yeah.
What do you expect from this guy? For me, I expect him to knock down open threes, which it sounds like is the bare minimum that the Grizzlies are probably going to expect of him. Do you expect the same? Do you expect him to do more than that? As the eighth guy in the rotation now, which I think he's, a lock to be that. It's Tyus and then Brandon Clark and Luke. Is he in 20 minutes a night, if he makes 3 threes, but does literally nothing else, is that enough for you?
I think he has to be serviceable on defense.
Okay.
Serviceable, we'll see what Darian has to say here in a second, but I talked to a couple people out, in that market just to get a gauge for it. And the sense that I got is, he tries defensively. There is the effort, perspective out there. And I think if he does that, and we mentioned that they like to play in these pairings. So more times than not, when he's in the game, he's going to be in the game with Dylan Brooks. Mm-hmm. So he won't have, unless they're playing, the Suns or someone, but he won't have a super tough defensive assignment on the wing because Dylan Brooks is going to pick up that assignment on most nights. So with that being the case, I think there's potential there. You say, hey, we want you to play serviceable defense, and we want you to shoot the ball like nobody can. And I think that's, a reasonable expectation.
I am excited personally for end of game situations where defensive sub can be Dylan Brooks, right? And it's Ja, Bane, Brooks, Jaren, Steven Adams, Brandon Clark. Clark has closed games at times. And then the offensive sub is Kennard in for Dylan Brooks. And now you've got Bane and Kennard next to each other, two of the best three-point shooters in the league.
So, Joe,
please.
Do you bring him into the game like just for that last minute or so, or are you bringing him in the game, earlier? Because I think that's the question, mm-hmm. right? Does he kind of, I'm sure it's going to be a game by game basis. We see the Grizzlies mix it up from time to time, but just the general thought here. I was thinking about this earlier, and I was like, does he kind of replace Dylan Brooks sometimes in those closing game situations? Yes. But you need Dylan Brooks' defense, right. against certain matchups. If you're playing, KD, Brandon Ingram, the list goes on, those type guys, you're probably going to need his defense. How do you handle that, Joe?
I would do it case by case, and I would do it possession by possession. I think you've got Dylan Brooks for defense, Luke Kennard for offense. That's one of the strengths of Taylor Jenkins is holding on to some timeouts to the end of the game. I think that you're able to call a timeout if you need to. You get Brooks out, Kennard in. I don't know. We have to see what Luke can do defensively. I don't know how comfortable I am with a Bane and Kennard 2-3 pairing. Offensively, it's going to be awesome. John Morant's going to have all the space on the planet. Defensively, makes me a little more nervous. I'm curious to get Darian Vaziri's take on that, and we're going to do that next here on Locked On Grizzlies. But first, Rocket Money. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by RocketMoney. Rocket Money, formerly known as Truebill, is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills all in one place. Do you even know how much your monthly subscriptions cost? Most Americans think they cost like $80 a month, but it's actually closer to $200. Rocket Money will help you with that problem. Over 80% of people have subscriptions that they just forget about. Rocket Money quickly and easily identifies those subscriptions for you so you can stop paying for the ones you don't want. Over 3 million people have used Rocket Money, saving the average person up to $720 a year. Stop throwing your money away, cancel unwanted subscriptions, and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/lockedonnba. It's simple, it's easy, and it will help you trying it for 30 days to see how it feels and just give it a look, right? You try subscriptions for 30 days, you completely forget about them. Give Rocket Money a shot. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedonnba, rocketmoney.com/lockedonnba. We will be joined by Darian Vizieri of Locked On Clippers next here on Locked On Grizzlies. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am one of your hosts, Mullinax, joined by the incomparable, the wonderful. I'm not going to go too in depth because we're still figuring out if Damichael's comfortable or not. But
we got to take a couple days off. The people have caught on.
They're noticing that I'm going a little overboard. I don't want to upset them too much. The fantastic Damichael Cole of the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, the Memphis Grizzlies beat writer. And we're joined at this time, and forgive me, this is the first time I've done this. So if you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to be mixing it up a little bit here. Let's see how it goes. Let's see if I can do this different. Yeah, there we go. That works. I like it. There's Darian Vizieri of Locked On Clippers. Darian, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. How about yourself? Thanks for having me, guys.
Man, doing pretty good. Pretty good. Good to have you on.
I know on the Locked On NBA DMs on Twitter, which were hopping on trade deadline day, very predictable. It was my first trade deadline day. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was yours as well with Locked On Clippers. Is that correct? Or
I'm new with Locked On. I've only done this season as my first. I'm a rookie.
That's what I thought. So am I. Damichael's almost done with his rookie year. But
there we go.
Anyway, so we're 3 rookies here, and we're excited to have you on, Darian. We appreciate your time. We know you're busy. I'm curious as to your take on Luke Kennard, because brief checking out of ideas and in reading articles and quick podcasts and all those sorts of things, it seems like if you expect him to just be a 3-point shooter, you're going to be fine with him. Beyond that, he's kind of polarizing. You talked about how you thought he could do a little bit more, and you were upset that the Clippers gave him up. I've had other people reach out to me and say he actually stinks. The only thing he can do is shoot the 3. So I wonder if there's truth in the middle. How do you perceive Luke Kennard and his fit with the Grizzlies?
I absolutely love Luke Kennard. Listen, I brought my Luke Kennard shirt just for you guys.
That is, can I see that? Yeah.
Luke. Listen,
we're gonna have to go with that nickname. I think we can't let anybody else make up a nickname for him, Damichael. We have to push the Nuke agenda.
Clipper fans are very disappointed today because Luke Kennard is not only just a fan favorite, but he is one of the best shooters I have ever seen with the Clippers. He shot 45%. He's shooting 45% from 3 this year, and he shot really well last year, but he moves so well without the ball. And honestly, one thing people don't really understand about Luke is he's better off the bounce than you think. Like better off the bounce than like a JJ Redick was, or even to me like a Kyle Korver was. Like he has this one-on-one, he only has one move, and he goes right, and then he steps back for the mid-range jumper, and it's pretty nice. He also is pretty good at utilizing pump fakes, and I think here's the most underrated part about him is he's underrated in terms of playmaking and pick and roll. Now, I don't think he needs to do that much for you guys, and he's not great at it. But last season, the Clippers didn't have Kawhi and Paul George, right? And we didn't have another point guard on the roster besides Reggie Jackson after we traded Bledsoe away. So a lot of the second unit was Terrence Mann and Luke Kennard and Amir Coffey splitting ball handling duties. And we won games because the thing about Luke is this. You set a high ball screen for him. Whoever's guarding that pick and roll needs to step up. If you let Luke walk into threes, like, good luck. And it's very sad that he got traded. Very sad, because the only reason he did is because the front office brought John Wall, so that created a logjam at the guard position. And Ty Lue is very wishy-washy with certain players, but very loyal to certain players. The reason why Reggie Jackson got traded is because Ty Lue couldn't save Reggie from himself. He would play Reggie a lot more than a Luke Kennard, which is not the right move in 2023. We're very sad to see Luke Kennard go. He's a pretty high IQ player, and defensively is what I heard you guys talking about, right? Damichael's right when he says Luke Kennard he plays hard. Like, I'm not going to say he's diving on the floor or anything, but there are very few games where I watched Luke Kennard these last 2.5 years, and I said, Luke didn't try it all on defense tonight. He always does try. He's just, a 6'4", not very great laterally and not the strongest guy, but he's a smart defender. And I think with the defensive players that you guys have around him, he's going to be fine. Any defensive metrics with Kennard this season, you can throw them out the door, because he was playing alongside a lot of 3-guard lineups, which is what Clipper fans have been complaining about this season. And we have no backup big man besides Zubac. So when Zoo comes out of the game, if dudes are blowing by Luke Kennard or any guard on the Clippers perimeter for that matter, there's no rim protection down there. So his lineups are going to be bad defensively, but listen, you said you want him to be a serviceable defender. He is absolutely that. And I'll tell you this, he's improved defensively every year he's been with us.
How would you describe his consistency? Because I'm looking at the numbers, and I looked at some of the game logs, but for you have the eye test. You see it every day. A lot of shooters, shooting just in general is a streaky thing.
Yes.
But the Grizzlies primarily rely on Desmond Bane. If he shoots well, they have a really good chance. If he shoots bad, it's probably going to be ugly. How much can they rely on Luke Kennard to be that type of guy who can give them that boost consistently from three-point range?
He is pretty consistent. The only reason those numbers may look off is because Ty Lue has always been, for whatever reason, so strict with Nuke. The thing is, the first year he came to LA, there was this whole story about how when he was in practice and he would hesitate to shoot, Ty would sub him out of the drill or sub him out of the scrimmage. And in the games, anytime he would pass up an open shot, he would sub him out of the game. The whole thing with Nuke is you want him getting his open shots up there. Because I tell you what, when this guy gets hot, every Grizzlies fan should go watch the highlights of the Clippers' 35-point comeback last season against the Wizards. Some of the shots that guy makes literally from like 35 feet when he gets hot. I have a video on my personal YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, a vlog from last season. It's like Luke Kennard goes nuclear against Houston. Dude, this guy's pulling up from the parking lot. Like, when he gets hot, it's insane. And to answer your question, consistently, he is consistent. The only thing is you got to consistently give him minutes. If you pull him out after one bad game and play him like 5 minutes the next game because he was 1 for 5 one night, his confidence is going to get shot. And the last couple of games, I'm telling you guys, his confidence is low right now. He shot one time last night. I was at the game, and it was a bad miss. And one thing you're going to learn about Luke very quickly, and I'm not even exaggerating here, I legitimately think every shot that guy takes is going in. I swear to God. Every time he shoots, I think it's going in. And wow. He's really that great of a I kid you not, he's that good of a shooter. But the problem is he's coming off he's had a calf injury this season, lingering calf injury. So that's been hard for him. And when the Clippers have like so many guys that deserve to play and Luke goes 1 for 4 and is like not having a good defensive game because he's not a very good defender. He's, I would say, below average to average. And then Ty will just sit him out a game. He loses his confidence. You got to let him know that he's going to consistently be playing off the bench and he'll be fine.
We're talking with Darian Vizieri of Locked On Clippers. I know you're a busy man, so we'll get you out of here on this. The Grizzlies, only thing they do is Danny Green swap for Luke Kennard. So now your 8th man is Luke Kennard. You've got Tyus Jones. You've got Brandon Clark. Kennard, I think Damichael and I will talk more about this, but 18 to 20 minutes a night is probably a realistic expectation for Luke moving forward. Are the Grizzlies a team? And again, the Clippers made a bunch of trades beyond just this one. When you look at the Western Conference, this leads into our next segment. Do you think the Grizzlies are still a team to reckon with, or do you think other teams like the Clippers, obviously the Suns, has Memphis not done enough? Or are they going to start fading?
No, I think you guys are definitely a team to reckon with. I mean, I know you're on a loop, haven't been playing the best basketball of late, but I'd assume you guys think that it's going to be okay in the end. Are you guys worried? I mean, I might ask you, are you guys worried?
People are pretty bummed out in Memphis for the most part, at least in terms of the recent play. So I guess from an outsider's perspective, because this is our first time since Damichael and I started having a guest on with us, just your perception of the Grizzlies. Like when you look at the Grizzlies, say Memphis is the 3 seed and the Clippers are the 6. How are you feeling going into that series? Obviously, you're a Clippers guy. You're going to be confident, but are you still, the being fine in the West, all the stuff that Memphis has gone through, has that armor kind of does it look less impressive, or do you still say, oh, crap, the Grizzlies are one of the best teams of the league?
No, I think the Grizzlies are who I thought they were before the season. I thought you guys would I didn't think Jaren Jackson Jr. would come back as fast as he did, so I predicted you guys would get the 6th seed, and I think you'll finish above that. And if you guys get home court advantage for the 2nd consecutive year, I don't know how many teams in the West can say that, and I think it really all depends on the matchup, of course, but I think there's no series, in my opinion, in which I think the Grizzlies have no shot. I would favor the Denver Nuggets. I don't know how much you guys match up with them. I would favor the Denver Nuggets, and I would probably favor the Suns now, but they haven't even played a game together.
That's true.
What the Grizzlies have going for them is they're a very athletic team and very young, and I think that the end product with this team going forward is just going to be about Ja Morant's maturation as a superstar and Desmond Bane, Jaren, all these guys, through losses in the playoffs. I don't think the Grizzlies are going to win the championship this year, but it doesn't matter. You have one of the young, most exciting players in the league. Jaren Jackson Jr. is young. Desmond Bane. I mean, the future is bright in Memphis, and trust me, as a Clipper fan, we've had our battles. That pains me to say.
Darian Vizieri of Locked On Clippers, thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you're checking out Locked On Clippers, obviously a proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network, just like us, does a great job over there. Thank you so much for your time. We wish you well, and down the road, we'll be happy to return the favor.
Hey, take care of Luke, man.
Yes, we will. Absolutely. Thank you, buddy. There he goes again. Darian Vizieri of Locked On Clippers, big fan of his. Appreciate him taking the time. When we come back on Locked On Grizzlies, where does Memphis stand? You hear an outsider's perspective. Maybe we're being too hard on these Grizzlies, Damichael. Are they still a team to fear in the Western Conference? We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Grizzlies. But first, this episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NFL. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because, again, the number one sportsbook in America, FanDuel, is them. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. You can download FanDuel now to bet Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet does not win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line, who will score a touchdown, point spreads, all of it. Maybe you're a fan going into the big game of the Eagles or the Chiefs. You can log into FanDuel, make your bet, place your wager. It's super easy, super fun, secure, and you get paid your winnings instantly. Join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/LockedOn to claim your no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Where the Grizzlies stand in the wild Western Conference after a pretty wild trade deadline. Next, here on Locked On Grizzlies. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your co-host, Joe Mullinax, joined by the incomparable, the perpetual. Is perpetual a compliment? Probably not. I'll just stop there. The tremendous Damichael Cole. They have me flustered in the comments. Keep making the comments coming. You guys are shaking me a little bit. My good buddy, Damichael Cole, the commercial appeal there in Memphis, Grizzlies beat writer. Happy to have him with me to close out our week here on Locked On Grizzlies. A busy week, but a good week. When you're busy, usually that means you're working and you're doing some good work, and that's where we're at here on our show. Damichael, you heard Darian in the previous part of our show, the previous segment. He still sees the Grizzlies as one of the best in the West, one of the best in the league. And that's nice to hear from an outsider because there can be a lot of
I'd also like to. I think it was nice for the fan base to hear that.
Yeah,
because everyone's all over the place. Listen, you hear it from someone who's not, here overreacting to each and every game every single day. Darian just basically said the Grizzlies are a factor. So take that in, Grizzlies fans.
I think that's nice. Now he does seem a little bit. Again, he's very high on Kennard. I had Lucas from 213 Hoops. Yeah, who he and I have talked back in the past, all the way back to our SB Nation days. Yeah. And he hit me up and he was like, not so fast, my friend. He was a little bit less confident in Kennard as a defender, as a facilitator and creator off the dribble. We'll have to see it for ourselves to an extent. But what we all can agree on is he's one of the best shooters in the NBA, and the Grizzlies needed help in that department. So when you look at the Western Conference, the Golden State Warriors got better. They didn't get OG Anunoby. They were a late arrival to that race, but nobody got OG Anunoby. He's still at the Toronto Raptors. The big trade, of course, was Kevin Durant going to the Phoenix Suns. Massive deal. You have Kyrie Irving in Dallas now, a Luka-Kyrie pairing, which we've talked about before on the show. Obviously, in the standings, the Grizzlies are still the 2 seed going into tonight's game with the Timberwolves, and Mike Conley might play in that game. How weird will that be to see Mike in a Minnesota uniform? We'll have to talk about that on our next episode. But when you look at the Western Conference, the Grizzlies are the 2 seed now. The Denver Nuggets, everybody's still chasing them. Are the Grizzlies the second best team in the West? We're not talking about seeds. We're not talking about records. It's almost like a whole new season coming out of the trade deadline. If you had to rank these teams, where do the Grizzlies fit? I don't think they're second on my list anymore.
I don't think they're second on my list either. But, there is room for growth there, I think, even from the Grizzlies' perspective. But they're not second. I think, I've said time and time again, I think if the Grizzlies play Denver in a series, they can win that series. And I stand by that. That's not the team that I have in front of them. If we were just talking about, in a playoff series, which team I think the Grizzlies will lose against or beat, Clippers and the Suns stand out. And they haven't beaten Golden State yet. And I've said time and time again, I believe, we're looking at the season so far. They've been a better team than Golden State overall. But Golden State's 2-0 against them this season. Golden State beat them last year in the playoffs. Until the Grizzlies get over that hump, I can't put them over Golden State. So, Golden State, Phoenix, because of, the recent deal. I mean, they acquired Kevin Durant. And then, I think the Clippers and Grizzlies are nip and tuck. I think the Grizzlies had a big advantage when it came to that matchup before this trade for Mason Plumlee for the Clippers. I think the big advantage that the Grizzlies had over the Clippers was the fact that they could bully ball them, right? Now you can't really do that because you can because you have Steven Adams, but it's going to be a tougher matchup. Zubac can rebound really well. Mason Plumlee isn't bad in that department as well. But the 2 teams I'll put right now comfortably, I say, that's a tough matchup. It's Golden State because of history, and then it's the Phoenix Suns. I still think everyone's talking about Denver. Oh, don't forget Denver. I think the Grizzlies just match up well against them. That's my personal opinion, but that's how I feel about it, Joe.
I think that's fair. I think the Grizzlies are probably 4th in the Western Conference as of today, and that probably puts them 7th or 8th in the NBA now. But context is important there, so let me briefly explain. I think that Golden State is going to be in that conversation. It's hard to not see them there. Now, Curry is hurt again, out for another month or so, I think, or a little less. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But last time Curry was out, they held ground. They held serve, right? They were 500, I think. Realistic to expect them to do that again. I'm going to respect Denver because in the Western Conference, they're the one team that's actually been able to separate. It used to be 2 teams, right? Before the Grizzlies' recent stretch of cold play, it was Memphis and Denver. Now Memphis has fallen back to the pack a little bit. Denver is the class of the Western Conference. So it's hard for me to – your logic is sound. It may be a topic for another episode. Talking about the Nuggets.
I respect them. But you know who they remind me of? They remind me of those 04, 05, 06 Suns, right?
Ooh.
Steve Nash, unstoppable MVP candidate that everybody loves, Nikola Jokic. But defensively, there are some concerns. They didn't do enough at the deadline for me to say, they're going to be able to lock down Devin Booker, Chris Paul, Kevin Durant. Or they didn't add rim. They got Thomas Bryant. Thomas Bryant, I think his defensive field goal percentage around the rim is like 70%.
Yeah.
Hello, John Morant, one of the best paint scorers in the NBA.
That's true.
It's just a matchup thing for me. I think Denver can beat the crap out of so many teams in the West.
Right.
But just this is Locked On Grizzlies. From the Grizzlies perspective,
that's true.
I think it's a tough matchup for them. That's all.
Okay. No, that's fair. And I think that, you have to look at what the Suns did, right? The Suns are the favorite to come out of the Western Conference now for the exact reason you said. Denver and Phoenix is probably the projected final as of this moment. And Phoenix would probably win that series for the reasons you just said. And they have DeAndre Ayton still, who could contend with Jokic and at least make him work and maybe tire him out a little bit to try to negate the historic offensive season that Jokic is having. So I would probably have them fourth. I could probably be talked into third. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't want it to make it sound like that I'm crapping on what the Grizzlies did. We don't know what was realistic for Mikal Bridges, if that was ever realistic, that brief flirtation when Grizzlies Twitter lost their mind, myself included, in fairness.
Yeah. You were buying it. You were buying it.
Super excited. Well, but my point is, say something happens in Brooklyn, they don't want to pay all that money because they have a lot of money divided up into wings now.
Yeah.
And guess what? The Grizzlies did not give up a single first to Michael. So who's to say that $15 million contract of Luke Kennard paired with a 15 or
you're thinking ahead. You're thinking ahead.
But that's this front office. And I know you know that. You're tossing me softballs. That's exactly what they're doing. If they want to go get OG Anunoby this summer, if they want to go get Mikal Bridges, that is all still on the table. And theoretically speaking, they will be easier to acquire, cheaper, in theory, this summer when there's not a playoff race to go into. Maybe Brooklyn decides to just completely tank the next coming season, and they start giving up these guys and going into accusation mode, racking up assets. The Grizzlies could still give up 3 first-round picks, Zaire Williams, and now Luke Kennard instead of Dillon Brooks for Mikal Bridges. So I think that there is still openings for them to improve this roster long-term while they still made the team better in the here and now. I feel better about them in the Western Conference than I did 24 hours ago, and that is a positive thing. They maintain that long-term viability. They maintain the ability to be active around the trade, not the trade deadline, around the NBA draft, which is when they have been very active in the past. They walked the line like maybe we should have predicted them to do all along. But like we talked about yesterday, the idea of them being in a position to do nothing was legitimately concerning. Like that would have made sense given history. Yeah. But if I were a Grizzlies fan, and I am a Grizzlies fan, and I saw the team struggling and they did nothing, that would make me think they didn't care. I think that they understood that to an extent. It's not like they were pressured, but they saw an opportunity for a deal that fit their timeline that they thought would help them without sacrificing future planning, and they pulled the trigger. And they deserve credit for that.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And, shout out to the Grizzlies for pulling that trigger. As the clock was winding down, the fan base felt like getting a little uneasy. Just with that. So the Grizzlies did pull the trigger. And, some good things feel like they're ahead. The shooting improvements that Luke Kennard kind of gives this roster. And one thing that you have to remember when it comes to the trade deadline, the goal is to get better. The Suns acquired Kevin Durant, one of the top scorers of all time. There's no way to match that. Everyone, some people, there's a saying, comparison is the thief of joy. Comparison is the thief of joy.
Now you're a philosophizer.
Yeah, a little bit. Every now and then. Mm-hmm. So if the thing about it is you can't get caught in that. You can't say, oh, they got Kevin Durant, we got Luke Kennard. Well, guess what? You go show me how many Kevin Durants that were just floating out there at the trade deadline. There's only one. You go show me how many Kevin Durants there historically been floating out there at the trade deadline. Only one. So with that being said, that was historical. If you just put in perspective what the Grizzlies did in comparison to some other things, we talked about Eric Gordon a lot on here, right? He went to the Clippers. Eric Gordon, Luke Kennard, marginal difference, I say. And Luke Kennard is the better shooter. At the end of the day, that's what the Grizzlies were seeking really hard. So they got what they wanted, they got what they needed, and they got better. It's that simple.
It's that simple. So obviously, it would have been cool to have OG Anunoby. It would have been cool to have Mikal Bridges for sure. But they could still potentially do that down the road. They didn't sacrifice their long-term draft capital. Second-round picks were flying around like hotcakes, like some close to 50 second-round picks were dealt throughout this trade deadline week, which is pretty remarkable. They still have all their first-round picks, plus the Golden State 2024. They can make some waves in the summer if they want, or maybe they just continue to work with what they've got and focus on internal development and let their 3 best players who are under the age of 25 continue to grow and be their best guys. That seems like the likeliest end game as of now. But again, they are better today than they were this time yesterday, and that matters in terms of the fan base should be satisfied, at least in my opinion. I am satisfied. I wanted to see them say what has been happening is not acceptable. It wasn't the grandiose example of that, but they made it clear that this needed to be addressed, and they did that in acquiring Luke Kennard, at least to an extent. Thank you for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen today. Now make your second listen Game to Game NBA. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the NBA with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game where you get your, Locked On Game to Game NBA on Locked On NBA, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. The next time we're together will be Monday. This is obviously leading into a weekend here at Locked On Grizzlies. The Grizzlies have 2 games this weekend, if you count today's game against the Minnesota Timberwolves. And then they play a Sunday matinee. Correct me if I'm wrong, Damichael. I believe it's on ABC on Super Bowl Sunday against the Boston Celtics. That's a pretty big deal. Not quite Christmas Day, obviously, but the NBA game on ABC before the Super Bowl, that's second place in terms of stage. So it'll be interesting to see how the Grizzlies address and attack these next couple of games. You'd imagine Luke Kennard will be available for Memphis by that Sunday game as well.
Yeah, should be fun. Should be really fun. Remember that first game where the Celtics beat the Grizzlies in Memphis. Some late missed free throws, by Ja and a couple other, just breakdowns late, and the Celtics pulled it out. But be fun to watch these two. Two of the best young cores in the NBA, and they're both going to be really good for a long time.
We'll be back to talk about that on Monday's episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Thank you so much for listening, for watching. It's been a busy couple of days here at Locked On Grizzlies, but we appreciate you checking out our YouTube page. Like, comment, subscribe there. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts as well. Rate, review. Again, we're continuing to build the show. We know there's ways we can be better. We know there's ways that we're doing things pretty well. Continue to interact with us. Continue to hit us up in the chat. Continue to send us comments. Let us know how things are going, and we'll continue to grow this wonderful podcast that Damichael and I call home together. So until Monday, enjoy your weekend. Be safe. Have some fun. For Damichael Cole of the Commercial Appeal, I am Joe Mullinax. Until Monday, stay locked in, Grizzlies fans. This is Locked On Grizzlies.